show. My name is Jenna Morton.
And I'm Tosh Taylor, and on today's episode, we are talking mushrooms. Not the magic ones, because they're not legal yet. But we are going to be chatting with a mushroom expert here in the greater Moncton area, Jessika Gauvin. Jessica, welcome to the show.
Glad to be here.
We are very excited about today's episode because you're something a little bit different than what we normally would have on the show, and I'm really excited to experiment with something different.
Look at you just like diving right in.
Again, not the magic kind.
We are going to talk not just mushrooms, but foraging in general, right? Like
Yeah.
this is a little bit of everything in the outdoors we're going to talk about.
Okay, so let's start with your business first off, and where this idea of you taking people out into the bush to discover what they can eat safely and how to prepare those things safely. Where did the enchanted mushrooms come from?
So my very, very, very first memory was actually toddling around my backyard with my mom to pick mushrooms. I did not know it until last year, but she actually took grocery store mushrooms and smushed them into the back lawn over and over and over until they started growing in our backyard. So it was really important to her that we have a connection to the land, that we know where we came from, that we know that we can take care of ourselves, that we can live with the land and feed ourselves off the land and kind of just have a connection. So I grew up with that. She was a single mom, money was tight, so it was also a way of like adding more nutrients to our food. Wild food is really nutrient dense. I fell away from it as a teenager because food on the ground isn't cool. Ew, gross, Mom, what the heck? I ended up finding out that I have complex PTSD, and I ended up dabbling back in the forest herbs, looking for a mushroom that helps support the body with stress hormones. And then I just kind of, there's a culinary mushroom and it's really yummy, so maybe I'll eat it. And I took a class, I took another class, and then it was so much fun. I enjoyed it so much. I got so much healing from it that I just started to post on my Facebook, hey, anybody want to come out into the woods with me and look at some mushrooms? And I just started taking people out, and after a while, my mom was like, you could make a business out of this. And people were like, we would pay you for this. And I just kind of stumbled into it, really.
I love that.
Yeah.
I think that we underestimate a lot of the time how much people are interested in getting back to that kind of knowledge that we know existed for so many people for so long that we've just kind of moved away from. Talk a little bit about that reaction you get from people when you talk about what you do.
Well, for me, I think the coolest thing is when I first started, I would be in the bush, like picking some mushrooms, and people would be walking through and they would look at me like I had 6 heads, and they were like, what are you doing? Don't you know some of those are dangerous? And they would step back from me like they were scared, like I'm some sort of wild woman. And just to watch that kind of shift. Now, if I knock on somebody's door and I ask about their mushroom, they don't look at me like they're scared for my life. They look at me like, oh, well, what can you tell me about it? Like, people are interested and people want to know, and I think it's really cool to see that evolution. I think people want to feel like they're more connected to their food, because their food is like, there's a lot of distance between us and our food. So I think it's really cool to kind of reclaim that.
Can I just backtrack for a sec
Yeah,
there?
absolutely.
If you see a mushroom on someone's front lawn, are you legit going up to their front door?
100%. Oh gosh, yeah. Some of the coolest finds I have ever found are just by like accident driving, and you see like this huge cluster of mushrooms on somebody's tree. And I actually, last week I had was dropping my kid off at a friend's house, and there was a big, probably a 20-pound cluster of oyster mushrooms on a tree, and the gentleman was working on his car, and I got out and I'm like, hey, can I have that mushroom? And he was like, yeah, sure, what is it? And I'm like, well, it's oyster mushrooms. And he's like, I buy oyster mushrooms from the grocery store, I love them. And I'm like, well, you have a whole bunch. He had 2 trees that were just covered in them. Yeah.
Wow.
And it's a beautiful thing.
It is a beautiful thing. You just saved him a bunch of money.
Right?
Right.
Yeah, a little bit of oyster like that is probably between $5 and $10, and we're talking clusters like this.
Wow.
Yeah, and a lot of the mushrooms around here are very like hot, haute cuisine, like high culinary, like delicacy type mushrooms. We're really lucky here in New Brunswick.
That are just growing in the wild.
Oh, totally.
Huh.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's so interesting. I remember when you first started talking about mushrooms, this was probably after you had started the Facebook page.
Yeah.
And how quickly it blew up and how excited people would be to post in there about like, look what I just found. Or, you know, Jessica, can you help me? Is this safe to eat? That has just like exploded for you, right? Like that whole Facebook group and everything is I feel like it's worldwide now.
Oh yeah, for sure. We've the mushroom community online is absolutely massive, and within the foraging groups that we have all around New Brunswick, we do have experts from all over the world, and some people from other parts of Canada prefer our group because of the inclusivity and the sense of community and the lack of judgment. We have a really beautiful foraging group here in Facebook, or on Facebook here in New Brunswick.
What is the name of that, just so people can look it up?
There's more than one. Mine is Enchanted Mushroom Forest, Foraging and Folk Medicine, and we also have Mushroom Hunting New Brunswick.
Okay.
Beautiful, beautiful groups.
For people who are still in that like, what are you doing to yourself kind of phase of things, talk a little bit about how you know and how you help people understand what is safe and what isn't safe, because there are things that people still should not just pick up and eat.
Oh, absolutely, 100%. So when it comes to foraging, there's this misconception that mushrooms are crazy, 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 crazy dangerous. Don't look at them. Don't make eye contact. They'll get you. Plants are actually more dangerous because there are plants that can hurt you through your skin. So you're allowed to touch all the mushrooms. So first and foremost, touch the mushrooms is totally fine. It's really important when you're looking at your mushroom, you pick it up. You want to get the whole thing, so get under the stem and push it up, because we want to be able to see everything, the bottom of the stem, everything, the gills or pores or whatever is going on underneath. When you're first starting out, it's really important that you start with mushrooms that don't have dangerous lookalikes. So there's no trick. There's no like, oh, all mushrooms that look like this are safe and all mushrooms that look like that aren't. This feature's always deadly, this feature's always safe. There's nothing like that. You just have to get to know each kind. But there are a lot of beautiful mushrooms that are so unique. I'll give you guys an example. There's a big red mushroom that's hard like a turnip, that doesn't have any gills or anything. It's just smooth underneath. When you cut it open, it's pure white inside and it smells like seafood. There is not one other mushroom on this planet that checks all of those boxes. He's completely unique. There's nothing even remotely similar to him. And he's not alone. There's a lot of mushrooms. Very unique, right? So that's what we start with. That one's called a lobster mushroom, by the way.
I was just going to say, so tell me more about this particular one. Can we find him here?
Totally,
I love that it's a him. I love that you like,
I
I can tell like you have personalities for all of them.
I personify the mushrooms.
I love it.
do. So my very first mushroom teacher, he took me hunting. We got in his truck and we went out to like a dirt road, like an old road. And he looks at me and he goes, take off your seatbelt, roll down that window, stick your head out there and look for lobster tails flopping around on the ground. And I'm like, what are you talking about? I didn't know. At this stage, I had not learned about lobster mushrooms. I had no idea what they were. But sure enough, off in the distance, there was this, they even have a shape that's a lot like a tail. Like they're skinny and then they kind of widen at the top. And then, yeah, they're red, like a lobster, and white on the inside like lobster meat. Super firm flesh.
So there's a mushroom I might try.
There you go.
Oh, it's really good.
Yeah.
It's really, really good. A lot of people are like, oh, I don't like mushrooms. I don't like mushrooms. And I'm like, no, you don't like the species of mushroom that they sell at the grocery store.
Right, yeah.
Because the flavors and textures of mushrooms they're limitless. You've got mushrooms that taste like maple syrup, Fruit Loops, shrimp, lobster, chicken, steak. Yeah.
Wow.
All of these flavors and textures exist in the mushroom. You can make desserts with mushrooms. There are sweet mushrooms. Oh, yeah.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
We've been like living in a closed off box, haven't we?
Like in my thought process, and I understand how limited this is. I'm like, mushrooms come from a can and they're gross.
I'm a weirdo. I like canned mushrooms. I'm like, oh, you know, you're this wild mushroom hunter, and you'll have all the fancy mushrooms. I'm like, yeah, but every now and then I just want a nice canned mushroom. Yeah. I don't know.
Well, to each their own. I'm just like,
Right?
I know, like my mother loved them. I'm like, nope.
Yeah,
Nope.
that's fair. It's a texture thing for a lot of
It
people,
is.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's why I don't like lobster, is the texture.
Yeah.
I wonder if the
Give
mushroom.
me all the lobster.
Yeah.
The texture of the lobster mushroom is a lot more mushroomy.
and not spongy.
but it's firmer than a mushroom,
Okay.
like a typical mushroom.
Okay,
It's very
yeah.
interesting.
Yeah, yeah.
Do you have a sense of like how many edible species of
Oh,
mushrooms are
Absolutely.
like locally?
Absolutely. We have hundreds of edible species of mushrooms, hundreds of edible delicious species of mushrooms.
Okay, so there's a variant there.
Well, so when it comes to your mushrooms, there's a spectrum. So you've got your edible and delicious, you've got your edible and gross, you've got your edible will give you a tummy ache, you've got your edible could potentially hurt you, and you've got your edible will absolutely, or not edible could potentially hurt you, and not edible will absolutely kill you. So there's that spectrum there. Did I say edible
That's-
for all of
Yeah.
them?
That's quite the spectrum.
It is though, it
Yes.
is. And then so if you were to pick up a wild mushroom,
Yeah.
how do you know if it's a dangerous one? Because I swear I saw one of your videos
Yeah.
once. Did you put a poisonous mushroom in your mouth? And it's fine so long as you don't swallow it, correct?
Yes. So there is a group that exists on Facebook that is dedicated to dispelling what's called mycophobia. So this is like the fear of mushrooms. So a lot of people are like, even after you tell them that it's safe to touch all the mushrooms, they're like, no, I can't. I have to grab a leaf and pick the mushroom up with the leaf. What if I touch my eyes? What if I touch my face? What if I eat my food with the same hands that I touch that poisonous mushroom? So mushroom toxins don't work the same way that plant toxins work at all. If you put a poisonous plant in your mouth, you're toast. It can go through your mucous membranes, right? Mushroom toxins don't do that. So you can lick and taste and spit any mushroom as long as you spit it out. In order for a mushroom to poison you, you have to swallow it. And some mushrooms, you actually need to get the flavor in order to help you tell what it is.
Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Right?
Okay, so that's a good thing to know if you're heading out. But I mean, we're going to highly recommend that you go out on tour.
Yeah.
Yeah, don't do
Yes,
leave
this
that
is-
to the professionals.
Yes,
Yes.
yeah. Let her show you what happens. But I think that's it's a good starting thing. And I agree. Like we're walking through the bush. I'm walking through like hiking trails in my backyard and going. First of all, we're talking about hundreds of mushrooms. I wonder how many of them I'm walking past not realizing it's a mushroom.
For sure.
Yeah, like the scallop ones that you were saying, or is that what you called them? The ones on the tree.
Oyster?
Yeah.
Yes.
Get my seafood mixed up there.
Yeah.
So the oyster one on the tree, I see those all the time.
Yeah.
I don't think I knew that was a variant of mushroom. I thought it was a tree growth, which I guess technically it is.
Well,
Yeah.
there's a lot of little mushrooms that grow from the trees that kind of look like a shelf.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, some of them are really hard.
Yeah.
A lot of those we use for tea.
Mm.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So we're walking past all these things.
Yeah.
Letting all this good food
And-
go to waste.
Well, and not just mushrooms though. Like there's a lot of things we're walking past that are
Yeah.
useful
Yep.
and edible and like not won't kill you, but could actually be good for you.
It's important to know what's going to potentially hurt you. I recommend people learn the poisonous things too. But my favorite thing to do when I have a group of people in the woods is I'll take an area of green space about as big as this table, and I'll challenge people to guess how many edible or medicinal things are in that space.
In a space just this big.
Just this big, as
Wow.
big as this table. And often you're looking at between 5 and 15 things that are edible or medicinal in a space like this.
Holy.
Yeah, there's food and medicine everywhere.
Literally everywhere. And when it comes to plants,
Yes.
how do we know that they're poisonous without being trained?
Again, you need to just take your time. What I recommend is when you're starting out, just learn one at a time. So pick one mushroom, like your lobster mushroom, a great beginner mushroom. There's many more that are wonderful beginner mushrooms. So learn one mushroom, learn one plant. Once you're really, really comfortable, I like to call it making friends. Once you've made friends with those, and you know how you, like in a big crowd and you see somebody far away and you're like, hey, that's my friend. And you can just tell because you've been around them so much. That's how you will get with the plants and the mushrooms too.
Wow.
So once
That's a
you've made
beautiful way
friends,
to think of it.
Yeah, it is.
once
yeah.
you've made friends with one plant and one mushroom, then say, okay, what's next? Then you can add one more. And once you get a certain number of them under your belt, you start to recognize the patterns and you start to pick out the different families because they all look similar within their families, right? I've heard it compared to learning a new language. It's really challenging at first, but the more work you put into it, the easier it gets. So take it slow, one thing at a time. Definitely go with a professional. There's lots of classes and courses available. There's lots of resources online.
And books, you could stop and get old-fashioned books, you know those?
Yeah.
You could take them with you.
Yeah.
Talk a little bit about the community here locally in the Greater Moncton area and how accessible it is for people to find people like you to do this with.
Super accessible. So the Facebook groups are probably one of the biggest reasons why I reached the level that I reached, because I made friends with people who knew more than I did. I was able to find people that I could study under from all over the world in the bigger Facebook groups for mushrooms. Sometimes just seeing the same mushroom, because everybody will post the same mushroom. When it's time for that mushroom to come out, you'll see like 20 people post the same mushroom every day. And then you see that mushroom 20 times a day and you're like, hey, I know that guy now. So you can learn that way. The community is really beautiful and everybody just wants to help everybody else grow and learn, and they're really encouraging. And we also have a mycological society here in New Brunswick.
Really?
Yeah, MycoNB. So we're a whole big group and we celebrate mushrooms. We do little events and big events.
Let's talk a little bit about the benefits of mushrooms and why people should add them into their diets.
Okay.
I feel like we found your happy place.
So mushrooms, and I could argue that mushrooms are one of the absolute best things that you could ever put in your body. The most antioxidant rich food on the planet is a mushroom. So when I started out for the medicinal mushrooms, right? I went hunting for that mushroom to help with stress. So I found that mushroom, and then I got kind of lulled into the culinary mushrooms for a while, and I hunted the culinary mushrooms. After about a year of that, I found this really big mushroom, like this big, 50 pounds, soft culinary food mushroom.
Whoa.
Big, 50 pounds, big mushroom. So I took it home and I was doing my research to make sure it was what I thought it was, and to look up like how to use it, look up how to eat it, the best ways to prepare it, preserve it, all that stuff. And then I read that it's used in traditional Chinese medicine. And I was like, no, it's not. It's a food mushroom. What are you talking about? And then I learned that the mushrooms, some of them actually can do both. And then I played a game called What Mushrooms Don't Have Really Potent Medicinal Properties. They all do. Even your grocery store mushrooms contain really powerful anti-inflammatory compounds. The oyster mushrooms that you can buy at the grocery store or pick off of trees, they have compounds in them really similar to statins that can help control cholesterol. So yeah, each
Why are we not talking about this more? You know?
There are mushrooms
Like-
that can help regrow the cells in your brain and the sheaths on your nerves, and mushrooms that fight cancer, and mushrooms that support your healthy bugs that live in your belly, your microbiome.
That's so interesting. Yeah. So even your grocery store canned mushrooms will have some benefits left in them?
I'd rather try the lobster ones.
The maple syrup ones.
Oh,
That's
yes.
what you want.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, you could get us both in on the maple syrup one for sure.
They're so cool. They're called candy caps.
That tracks.
That's track. Absolutely.
So I know when people who, probably everyone has talked to someone who enjoys fishing and they have their fishing spot and they will not tell you where that is and share that information. What is that vibe like in the mushroom community?
Here, in a larger sense, yes, very, very much so. But for some reason, I don't know what it is, if it's just the culture of community and generosity that we have here in New Brunswick, but we don't see that in New Brunswick for some reason. You go into the Ontario foraging groups and they're like, but for some reason here in New Brunswick, they're like, oh, well, my tree made a bunch of hens and I'm already all stocked up. Who wants these hen mushrooms? People are they just want to help each other in our community, and I think it's really beautiful.
Yeah, yeah, that's absolutely incredible. Now, let's talk a little bit more about your business
Sure.
before we wrap up, because I know we alluded to the fact that your business has done great things, but you and I, like outside of the show, have talked many times about how it blew up. And then you got to be a part of a really cool thing with the WYMCA twice now, 2 years in a row. Can we talk about what you did the first year and then how it excelled you into the second year?
So I was invited to take part in an event called the Feminist Business Summit, and it was a gathering of women in business whose aim is to uplift their community through their businesses. So we ended up doing, the first year we did a lot of courses and classes on like mapping the assets that you have for your business and how your business can serve your community and all of that. And this year I was invited to be a speaker. This year the focus was how we can support our environment and how our businesses can be not just sustainable but an asset to the planet. So that was really beautiful.
Yeah.
And terrifying.
That's understandably so.
They didn't want me to talk about mushrooms. They wanted me to talk about business. So I got up there and I'm like, I really want to talk about mushrooms.
Here's what I found in Montreal while I was here.
I found so many mushrooms in Montreal. I brought them back on the plane.
Did you find something in Montreal that you wouldn't find here, though?
I did,
Okay,
yes.
So okay.
Yeah, so there's this, it's a big white mushroom that grows on cottonwood trees, and we don't have it here. And I found it there, and I wasn't expecting to find it there. I thought it was in the U.S.
Okay.
Really cool. Bucket list mushroom.
Bucket list mushroom.
I would love for you to just kind of elaborate on that, because I think a lot of people think about foraging and mushrooms as a very, like, you need to be somewhere where you can go down a dirt road, and that's not the case, because you were in Montreal.
Yeah. Yeah, so I look for green spaces. You want to make sure there's lots of weeds growing, because if there's lots of weeds growing, you know that it hasn't been sprayed, right? We have tons of green space here in New Brunswick. It's one of the most beautiful things, in my opinion, about our province. Little blocks that are just forest, or little walking trails, or little pieces of forest next to play parks. Like, I used to let my kids play at the park, and I'd wander into the edge of the forest next to the park where I could still have eyes on them, but I could also have eyes on the mushrooms. And my kids have come home from the bus stop. So the bus stop is here, and then it's down the street, and then through a field, and there's my house. And my kids have come home from the bus stop with book bags full of mushrooms.
Yay!
Go to the corner store, you find mushrooms on your way there.
I love it.
Plants, mushrooms, they grow everywhere. One of my favorite things to do with one of my students, or any of my students, I'll get them to meet me at my house. We'll get in my car, and we'll drive around town, hitting little patches of green space or little trees in people's yards that I know produce mushrooms. I have rolling permission. Can I come back for this mushroom anytime for years? Is that okay?
You're like, oh, there's Jessica again.
Yeah, they just wave at me in the window. Like, the mushroom
You're glad
lady's
someone's
here
using
again.
it, right?
Yes,
Like, why
exactly.
let it go to waste?
Right?
Yeah.
If someone wanted to do that experience, they want to hop in your car, tell everyone where they can find you before we have to let you go.
On my Facebook group at Enchanted Mushroom Forest, Foraging and Folk Medicine.
Amazing. Thank you so much for coming and chatting with us about this. Can I ask you quickly before we wrap up?
Yeah.
We're moving into the winter season. Can you forage mushrooms in the winter?
You can forage all kinds of things in the winter.
Okay, so you can sign up now. Go follow the Facebook page.
Gift it to someone for Christmas.
Yes.
Or to yourself.
Yeah.
Thank
Merry
you.
Christmas to
Yes,
you.
exactly.
Sorry.
No, I love it. I'm just going to thank everyone, including you, for joining us today. And we'll be back again soon.
Soon.